Well, guys, I want to welcome you to Overtime, where we take Sunday's conversation a little bit further and a little bit deeper. And I'm so grateful you're tuning in, and I hope your day is going amazing. And today we've got a great conversation because Sunday we kicked off a convo all about what's been taking place over the last 7 months, that the last 7 months have been incredibly I would say unparalleled in my lifetime, at least, with COVID and everything going on with our economy and everything going on with riots and racial tension in our culture, and now the political season. I mean, there's a lot going on to distract us. And on Sunday, I just gave a quick reminder of what the author of Hebrews 12 says, is to, in the midst of everything, good times, bad times, fix your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith. And so we're going to take that convo a little bit further, and I am so excited today because of who we actually have on this conversation. And these individuals I have known for over a decade, which is 10 years. So this is a really special group of people for many, many reasons, especially this fella over here. But let me introduce you to him. So I've got Krista Monk, who's sitting right in front of me, and Sarah Watts as well, just kind of to my right. And then I'm sitting next to Todd Pomroy. And so, guys, thanks so much for being here. I'm so grateful. This is kind of fun. Yeah.
Thanks for having us out.
Yeah, welcome. So real quick, just for the listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself. So starting with you, Krista, just, who are you? What would you like to say to people about you?
Well, I don't know what people really want to know.
I think there's a lot of things, perhaps. Yeah.
My husband and I have been married for 17 years. We've got a 14-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
That's crazy.
We've been a part of North Point since the beginning.
Yes. We were in your living room, like, strategizing and thinking, and what are we going to call this place and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Yeah. And your children are so old right now.
It's weird.
That's how it works. I mean, they just keep getting older.
And beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Wow.
They're very sweet.
That's amazing. Well, Krista, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Sarah Watts, you and I have some history because we have worked together.
We have.
We have been partners in crime.
Yeah.
And so, not sure you could, the church crime, that's kind of weird. Anyways.
In work.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you. Just give us a quick, who's Sarah Watts?
So my husband Jason and I have been married for almost 13 years. We have 3 kiddos, 4, 8, and 10. And we have done a lot of work together. I was on staff as family ministry director for years, and loved every bit of it. All things. You're laughing.
Yes. Well,
you're remembering.
There's this term called liminal space, which means it's like we've experienced things together that we don't even have to say words right now.
No.
We can just look at one and just laugh and just nod our heads because of, you were Wombland director and Upstreet and kids and ministries and family, and you've done so much, and from when we met in the school and transitioned into this facility and staff members and lots of stuff.
A lot.
It's amazing we're still friends. It's cool.
I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's good work.
Yeah, that's
Loved
cool.
it.
Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And then we have TP in the Vista Ridge hat and the cool glasses. So TP, tell us about you.
All I could say is I know you were scraping the bottom of the barrel to have to pull me in here today. But,
He's playing the humble card.
So I've been super lucky to also have been on the inception of North Point with my bride. She's put up with me for going on 24 years now. Just when I was reflecting on 24. That's a lot of putting up with on her part. 3 kiddos, 1 in college now, junior at Vista, and then a middle schooler. Totally surprised child, but that's another conversation. And then for North Point, we've just been lucky enough to get to do a lot of stuff, pull trailers, entertain 40 elementary school kids in leadership room with Minute to Win It games at the elementary, to serving, small group leader, getting to serve on the elder board for a period of time, and just do life with all you great people and a lot of other folks too. So just love the journey that North Point's provided and put us in this time, season, and place.
That's cool.
Looking forward to the talk.
Man, I'm so excited you guys are here. Yeah, as we were talking before the podcast, it's like, there's this sense of like, gosh, we've been together for over a decade and doing ministry and trying to create a church people love to attend and love to engage with, and trying to inspire people to follow Jesus and lead them in a growing relationship with Christ. And it's just been so many incredible memories. And so like just sitting here with you is cool. So thank you guys. So we're not here to actually talk about the history of North Point. We are here to actually talk about how in the world do we manage this tension? Because the reality is I mean, it's unprecedented. Like, I don't know, maybe in your lifetime you've had more things happen in a period of 7 months, like just kind of big cultural things, big global things. But I'm unaware of that in my life. And, I never anticipated when we started North Point that we, would not have live services for over 7 months. I never anticipated we would see the things we've seen. The political climate, like everything's being politicized. You just can't, like with, even family and neighbors and friends, it's like, gosh, you got to watch every single word because it's going in political buckets now because it's just the political temperature. And so and then, social distancing, being, our kids in school. There's so many things right now that are taking our eyes off Jesus or have the potential to. And there's this like natural gravitational pull. And on Sunday, I said, I don't think any of us really choose it. I just think it's part of this drift. I think it's like, it happens in teams, it happens in organizations, it happens in extended families. The longer you're not kind of in the same room or meeting together, I mean, there's a drift that happens. So I'm curious, just kind of to start the conversation for you guys, what's the last 7 months been like? Like, there's a lot going on. What have been, perhaps some of the struggles? What have been some of the things you've, perhaps enjoyed that you didn't think you were going to experience? Like, how are you guys doing? That good.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in. Why not?
Yeah.
So when I think about the last 7 months and, the things that we do in life, whether it's kids, family, relationship, work, North Point, you're juggling these balls and you don't want them to drop. And now you add in the extra that you just talked about. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the challenge of how do I make sure that I don't have something catastrophic like protecting my family, to what extent and how far and how deep do we take that, going to work and even just transitioning back home. And so that extra element really has been a challenge to work through and try to be thoughtful about it and see through the noise of the politics and how do I make a wise choice for my family. So that's been a huge one. And I'll just throw in another super personal. I lost my son, and I mean lost. He went to college. It feels like he's transitioning. It's a very positive thing.
Yeah, at first I was like, whoa.
So that's 19 years with a young man, and to have him leave my house in the midst of all of this. And so that has been, so for my wife and I, probably, for this 7 months, that's been the big hurdle for us to process through, work through. What's a wise choice in the midst of that?
Man, that's emotional.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't want to cry.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I haven't seen you cry a lot, so maybe we should push on you a little bit.
Oh, it could happen.
Yeah. Man, well, thank you. Like, I think that's just, that's the reality of it. I mean, just trying to figure out, hey, what does wisdom require of us? What kind of choices do we need to make? And, just loving and protecting our family and that whole dynamic in the midst of everything, that's real. How about you guys? Sarah? Krista?
Yeah, I think one of the challenging things for us has been, the introvert in me has not been challenged because I like to hide in my little turtle shell. I'm really comfortable with that. So it's like, stay home. Awesome. Don't get me wrong, I miss the things. I miss the restaurants and the date nights and, birthdays. But for me, the introvert, that was fairly easy. But then I think the complexity of the unknown and explaining all of that to our kids and not just handling and processing all of that for me and with Jason, but doing that with our kids, and they're 4, 8, and 10. And again, I've said to my friends who have teenagers, it's a whole other ball game. But for the young ones, I mean, even my 4-year-old, she's like, well, why can't I go to school? And then my olders are like, well, I get it, but I don't. And then they have their emotions on top of that. So you're trying to take care of yourself and then also take care of them and make sure that they're okay. Because they don't know how to check in on themselves. And then, of course, the complexity, like you mentioned, that it adds to other relationships in your life. Like, they were once complex enough, be it friends or family. But now you've added in the pandemic and the racial injustice and politics.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, we need a break.
I mean, even thinking about that, I think like, our parents or parents-in-law, it's like, we've experienced a little bit to where, and I don't know if this is across the board, but like, this seems like the older generation is like fairly like, flamboyant about like, hey, I'm going to go out. And we're like, hey, mom, dad, what are you doing?
Stay home.
You stay home.
You stay home.
And they're like, it's no big. And I'm like, this is an interesting dynamic now because it feels like the roles have reversed. Like we're kind of parenting going, hey, here's what's wise. And they're like, it's not a big deal. And it feels like that dynamic. And then, depending on their political persuasions, I mean, it's just so heated. And so those discussions are, more complex and, there's a weight to that. Yeah, cool. Krista, how about you?
I would say I second what Sarah was saying regarding our kids. That's probably been, for me, the most challenging. This whole thing I'm an extrovert, so I'm opposite.
Yeah.
And not being around people has been really hard, and I like people, and I miss people. And so navigating that, and I have an introvert and an extrovert child. And so watching how they were dealing with it and having those conversations like you were saying and helping them navigate. But on a personal level as well, getting the diagnosis of Rob having cancer. And then, what do you do? And then you really can't be around people because his immune system's lowered. And then all the judgment that comes with some of the decisions that we have made during the pandemic, from family to friends, and even in our own house, having some difference of opinions as to what we should or shouldn't do or what's the best thing. And, and honestly, it's been hard. It's been extremely isolating. And I just want I want a magic ball to say it's gonna end this date, and then we'll all go back to normal, and I'm gonna hug every person I see, and in the grocery store I'm actually going to get next to you and say hello to you, and not be uncomfortable if I get too close or someone's gonna be mad at me. And so I think just my normal routine has changed because I also ended up losing my job in the pandemic. So lots of change in our house. So it's been an emotional roller coaster, I would say, probably for most people, right? It's been sad. Yeah. It's been really sad. And I just want to go, I'm just going to hug all of you. Yeah. When this is over, I'm going to touch everybody. Not in a weird way. That sounded really bad. But
yeah, I totally know what you... Well, I don't because I'm not a big hugger, but I know there are people who like to hug. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, TP. But I love the points you made because I think, pre-COVID, if we just talked about life and just, with kids and marriages and, sustaining marriages and the ups and downs and, jobs and money and, God, and you just put all that in the midst, that's just hard. Like, there are great joys and there's great moments of peace, but in overall, it's like that can be a struggle. There's a lot of complexities just loving and leading well and persevering. And then you add all this. And I think it's just a whole additional layer of complexity that takes an emotional toll. And I do think, as I was talking about on Sunday, I think it can distract us from keeping the main thing. And now, we start putting our hope in other things, and we start holding on to security a little bit more and our comforts a little bit more and safety a little bit more. And not that we shouldn't be responsible, and I try to make that point a lot, but it's for real. Yeah.
I would say, though, that in the midst of the juggle, if I go back to my analogy, that it has helped me focus on, to say with my son who was a senior at the time, like I actually got a big swatch of time back. Yeah. That's cool. And the ball that I don't, I discovered, like, should I've known this already? I'm 50 years old, for goodness sake. It's like the relationship ball. Like if I'm going to fall, right, relationship over progress. And of course that totally connects to if I'm eternally focused or it's just about me and, hanging out with friends versus making a difference and helping people grow or growing myself. But it's also been an opportunity too, right? Because you can't go to the movies and you can't do this and this and this. And so what you're left with is a relationship, right? It's like what do you call it in cooking when you put it and reduce it down, and then that's the really good stuff you put on the steak at the very end, whatever that's called, a reduction, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just like the I don't know.
I thought you were going
It's
with
the good
chocolate chip
stuff.
cookies.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you mix all those together. I love chocolate chip.
Yeah, well, I like those too.
Yeah, not bad. Speaking of that, for me, I mean, I've experienced a lot of those similar emotions and some, certainly complexities trying to lead North Point and, make a lot of decisions and just to love and to lead, people well. And what does wisdom require of us is a question we keep asking. But from the time perspective, I'm about to cough. I've got something in my throat. So from a time perspective, something I didn't share on Sunday is that, not having Sundays for 7 months, it's the first time in a decade that I've worked Monday through Friday. And I'm like, this is what weekends feel like. And so I know this is probably terrible to say, but I'm just as brutally honest. I was like, this is fantastic. And, I can because you carry so much. Even, I try to take maybe a half day on Friday and, I try to take 3/4 of a day on Saturday. So all that kind of stuff. So you carry so much into Sunday and, being in ministry and you guys being on staff. I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then on Monday, it's like, giddy up. Hey, let's start again. And so, this is what I signed up for. By no means am I saying anything other than it's just been like the last 7 months wild to go like, hey, Friday, message is recorded. We're, tightening up some details and then like hanging out on Saturday and Sunday. I'm like, this is kind of cool. So anyways, for what it's worth. So going back to in terms of just like, the complexities and some of the challenges and the highs and the lows, on Sunday I talked about how do we, the author of Hebrews said, fix your eyes on Jesus, who's the author, the pioneer, and perfecter of our faith. And so ultimately just saying Jesus designed you, Jesus created you, Jesus knit you together in your mother's womb. He gave his life for you. So he not only designed life, but he knows how life works, like how to perfect, the steps for us to take. So how have you guys managed that tension? Because I think the reality is, I don't care how much of a, somebody goes, well, I love Jesus with all my heart. I think that's absolutely true, but we're also human. And throughout the scriptures, it talks about the flesh and the spirit and the flesh and the spirit, which is just like our humanity pulling against us, and then like the very Spirit of God reminding us of, of what love requires of us to do. And so how have you guys done that well? Like, what have you found that you've gone, this has been helpful, here's how I've managed that tension, here's how I've kept my eyes on Christ?
Well, when Rob was first diagnosed with the cancer, with anything, it wasn't really a why, but I will say I was mad, but I couldn't say what I was mad at. And so I kind of took it out on some weeds out in the backyard.
Yeah.
As I was crying, and Rob comes out and he goes, I can tell you're angry. And I said, yes. And he goes, what are you angry at? And I said, that you have cancer. And he goes, how can I help you? And I said, not be sick.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very raw. And, it was interesting. Through that period of time, he and I both just kind of, we ran to God, because what else can you do? Because we didn't know if he was going to live or if he was going to die, if we had a day, a week, a month, a year. And even still, we don't, right? So at least there was treatment for Rob. But at the same time, we ran to him, and there was comfort in that. And it actually gave us peace through it. Some weeds still got some things, got some of my anger.
Sure. Hey, that's a great place to let your anger go.
Yeah,
those weeds.
Yeah, exactly. When my emotions were getting the best of me and still trying to hold it in because my kids are home, and I don't want to scare them, because we didn't know for weeks what was wrong with Rob. It took almost 8 weeks for us to get a full diagnosis. But I would say how, sitting with Rob and running to God, and we were reading scripture together and praying together, but also doing the Caring Bridge that we did for him. It's just a website where we were updating people. We had people coming out of the woodwork that we haven't talked to in years since our wedding, who were praying for us all over the world. And just the community of believers that we had around us. I would say the special friendships that God has allowed into my life, another family that happens to live on our street, who, the community I got from her and her kids. And they have a lot of them. They have 6. So there was a lot of people around. I would just say the way we've been loved on practically has just, it's gotten us through.
That's great. Yeah.
So I wouldn't community. I would say definitely the community God has really blessed us with.
Yeah. And you said, you guys ran to God because you didn't have any other place to run, which I think, in these finite moments of life, we get such clarity on what life is really about. And you guys got that clarity, which, my heart breaks for, because I'm like, I wish I could carry that for you. I wish I could take that in that moment. But you said you ran to God, and then I heard you mention like the Bible and prayer. Is there anything else of what that means? Like, as somebody's listening going, okay, I want to run to God, but what does that look like? Like, what did, maybe you do personally? Is there anything else you would just add to that?
Well, I regularly I do my little daily devotions that come in my email that I get. And I listen to music, praise music, and that helps. But truthfully, having somebody to dialogue with when we read Scripture together, and what did it mean to you? I do that a lot with Rob, as well as another friend of mine. And it's interesting to see their perspective versus mine. I would say prayer together, and definitely those discussions about what we've read. Yeah.
Which is so important. And I think, the Scriptures talk about it all the time, like 2 are better than 1, let us encourage one another, let us spur one another, let us, persevere together. So, like, oftentimes, like, you can try to mechanically, hey, I'm going to open the Bible, or I'm going to, pray. But having that one another in your life is maybe the greatest catalyst to keep your eyes focused on Christ.
For sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, what about you, Sarah, or TP? Last 7 months, have you guys managed this tension, this drift that just pulls us away?
Yeah, there was definitely a drift, I think, in the beginning for me. I'm a processor. And so it was, like I said earlier, it was navigating the emotions and the information and the truth. And it was like, I think it just kind of, we were all at home. Nobody could go anywhere at first. So we were all at home. And, we were finding out that, I'll never forget, the kids found out all in one day that they were not going back to school that year, and Camp 75 was canceled. And I tried so hard to space them out, but I got the news on a video, and they were like, what? I was like, you weren't supposed to be in the room. So I think in the beginning, going back to your question, I think in the beginning it was just a lot of overload, and so it was incredibly mellow at our house. And it was almost as if time had stopped, but it didn't. And it was that I don't know what to believe next. I don't know what to do next. And completely, brutally honest, my practices started to change. And I've seen patterns of this in my life when things big come up where there's a change. It becomes more of a conversation with God, like an all-day conversation. I don't know what to say to them. I don't know what to think. God, what is true? What is, and then in that, I think that's where previous practices of reading and devotionals and study and groups and accountability all kind of come into play in those moments when I'm maybe not actively reading, but I'm conversation with God and spending time with Him, being quiet before Him, trying to make sense of everything. And I hear Him speak into that moment with His truth that He's, that I've, gone through before, that I've experienced before. And it all kind of reveals itself. But not every day was that magical. And I think some of the things that we've done even...
Wouldn't that be awesome,
true.
though?
I know. And
that's, that's the whole kind of formulaic. Hey, just pray these 2 prayers, read this one scripture, turn around 3 times, and bam, your eyes are on Jesus.
When you sit across from a friend and you're like, we're going to go to coffee for an hour, and it ends up being 3 hours. And it's like, oh, that was so great. Or you have a really great date night or something. It's not like that all the time, and that's okay. And that's something that I have to remind myself, because... there needs to be that flexibility in how you approach and how you deal with something. My brain needed to process everything going on and figure out what was true. So I found myself wanting to spend more time with Him and listen and discover. And so, but then we found too, So we actually decided to pull our kids from school, and using my education background again.
Boom.
And I'm homeschooling.
In the house.
I know, in the house. All
Homeschooling.
3, pre-K, second and fifth.
Were you ever homeschooled?
No.
Have you ever homeschooled before?
Nope.
First
But I've
time.
schooled, but remember, I was a teacher.
Yeah. So you've kind of
I'm familiar with it.
schooled in a school,
Yeah,
but not
yeah.
schooled in the home.
No, it is. It's interesting. And it's fun. We're loving it.
Yeah.
Which I didn't think I would.
Oh, yeah.
But to be honest.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
cool.
it's not for everyone.
Right.
But we're
That's why I
really
don't do
enjoying it. All that
Yeah.
to say.
Well, Jill tells me all the time, like, she's like, no, we just can't do this. And I'm like, I just couldn't handle it. And I'm like, babe, I love the honesty. That's helpful.
Yes, yes. Well, my husband thinks it's a long-term thing, and
Oh,
I
sure.
said we are going to evaluate.
Maybe
and
college
I
in the
am
home and
not
you'll be the professor.
doing high school. Anyway, back to your question yet again. I have found that now that we're doing school together, and we were all together all summer. Basically, it's an extended spring break, right? 7 months long.
Really long.
We are spending a lot of time together doing things, and I'm showing them how, like, we listen to worship music, and they have their favorite artists that they play, and they're like, can we listen to music while we do school? And that's what they choose. But that's something that we've modeled for them in the past, and so we're starting to do a lot of those things together with the kids, which has been really fun to have that opportunity.
That's cool.
It's rare, so it's one of those good things that has come out of that too.
Well, that's what you were saying, TP, in terms just having that time at the house. Like, one of the benefits of that is just that intentionality around our kids. And I just say, Jill and I have a phrase we use oftentimes when making decisions. I'm like, babe, are you ever going to regret that? Like, you're going to have to drop like these 3 balls and, not be able to do whatever. But like this one thing that you're having a tough time deciding, like 5 years from now, are you going to look back and go like, gosh, I really regret that? No, I think you're going to be grateful you did that.
Yeah.
And I think these moments with our kiddos, like just this intentional relational stuff, and, we're human, we get tired and we get grumpy and we're like, oh my gosh. And, but I think, who knows 10 years from now, like what our kiddos are going to say, like, mom and dad being there and, having that conversation. So
I think that's been the biggest gift in this whole pandemic is the time that we've gotten with our families. Because nobody was at work. No one was I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
Essential workers were at work. But I would say the majority of us got to experience being together.
Right.
And I can't say enough of how much I was just in heaven to just have that time, because I don't think I realized how busy we were.
Oh, yeah.
Until we
Until
slowed down.
Yeah.
And it was such, I looked at Rob and I said, you're home all the time. This is awesome. And he goes, it's really hard to do my job with all of you around.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I'm telling you, I was writing like, hey, this Sunday's coming up, and I'm writing my outline, and like Timbo's coming in. Hey, Dad, what about this? Jonathan, Dad, what? And I'm like, I've typed 2 words. Like, come on. Yeah. Totally.
Give me some space.
Yeah. Well, anything you guys would add to that before we move to kind of our next thought? That just how you've managed this tension? Okay, let's go. You guys ready?
Ready.
So I'm thinking in terms of just the practicality. So these are things like you were mentioning, just reading the Bible, and you were talking about, man, I feel like I'm praying all day, and and listening to music, and just things like that. So if we were just to sit down and say there was a hypothetical whiteboard over there, and we're whiteboarding just like really practical ideas and practical concepts to keep our eyes focused on Christ in the good and in the bad, in the hard and when things are wonderful. Like, what would you guys say? Just are like some common practices. Like, if we got as practical with Sunday's message and just said, hey, from if you're not a follower of Jesus all the way to being a follower of Jesus, here's some really practical things to help us keep our eyes focused. TP, how about you?
Sure, I'll jump in. So for me, I think pain causes me to pause and reflect on what's going on. And so if you said, hey, the 7 months has caused pain in these different ways, and so what's that meant, or what does that look like? It means that I've focused on relationship, especially at home, to just love on them right where they're at, and then you could say, hey man, looking back, that's really awesome. But then just from a kind of a spiritual standpoint, the pain of the pain in that we lost the opportunity to be in CG, we lost community groups, or lost the pain of not being able to just come to North Point and see all our friends that we've had that love us and just see all the time. And so in the midst of that, it's like, well, so what can I do personally? And that one of the first things for me, at least in the way I'm wired, is how can I serve? And so if I make that choice, right, it's a choice to serve. And so it could be like take a parenting class, and whether we're helping lead it or just be a part of it, like that helps me, have a goal or something to aspire to that is outside of myself, but also is going to grow me spiritually, emotionally, all those things. And so that's definitely one for the way I'm wired. Music definitely is too. When I listen to songs, like I hate to admit it, but Lauren Daigle, I'm driving into work.
She's amazing.
I like her.
Oh my gosh. Like I'm driving in and I'm a big tough firefighter and I'm crying. Like I have a tear and I'm literally like, why did I listen to this song? But like it resets me. It resets my clock to hear. So that's a very practical thing.
Do you sing to Lauren Daigle?
I probably do.
Yeah.
And I would tell you if I did. If we could just play it right now, then we can see if I do. But So I know actively serving is good for my DNA because it keeps me on point and keeps me headed, not to be self-focused, but outwardly focused. And in the midst of doing that allows me to grow. Music is without a doubt. And I can tell you, having some of those balloons pop, no Camp 75, your son doesn't get to graduate normally. And like even on the interstate, I'll just tell a one-off story that I'm driving in the middle of town, I'm on duty, it's amazing, the city of Austin, and no Camp 75, and I shouldn't have been reading my phone. That's totally, I could get fired for that, but I just confessed that out loud. But I'm crying. I'm 35. Like the weight of that just crushed my heart. I'm like, God, what are we doing here? Like just crying out, like, please help me understand. And of course, there's the bigger things in motion, and I totally understand that was a wise choice and to protect, the kids and stuff. Anyway, I don't even know if that answers the question. But,
no, that's super helpful.
I agree with you, Todd. I think if you're not a believer and you're seeking, for sure, getting involved at North Point, come to church. I love that we're opening. I'm so glad we're opening. And for those that even can't, I mean, at least the opportunity that we can still watch online or do that.
Sure.
That there are groups that we're even starting, whether you want to do it online or you want to join a parenting group or a starting point group, which for the non-believer or people seeking to understand who God is. So I love that that's available to us now and that we actually get to see one another.
I know, which is so cool. And even like meetup groups. I mean, part of the reason we launched meetup groups were to be organic. Like every week there's new meetup groups, and it's just the idea to go, hey, this is a meetup group around, like, I think there's knitting, there's a meetup group around mountain biking, there's a meetup group around CrossFit, there's meetup groups around parenting, meetup groups around like, hey, how to study the Bible. And it's like, all of those, that community, that is in part the strategic reason behind that, to go, man, this is a great step for us.
We've also gotten out of the habit of schedules. And so I feel like, be really transparent, I've gotten pretty selfish with my time. And I've enjoyed watching sermons in my pajamas.
I know.
And so to be real with that, to get up and to get ready and all that, I don't know if that's going to be an easy thing or a hard thing for people to do. But I have to say, even getting up and getting dressed and coming here was a great thing.
Yeah.
Because I got to be around people and see people, and I don't ever regret it when I do it.
Right.
It's just being in the habit and making that choice, I think, is a step in the right direction. If we've been out of the habit, which we all have, we've all been out of the habit of going to church. We've all been out of the habit of being in community. We've all been out of the habit of being with one another. And I understand that there's social issues if people can't come, if they've got immune system issues or whatever their rationale is that they need to stay home. But for those of us that can, I'm excited that that's another step that we can take. But there's also opportunities if you can't come to still connect with others.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why on Sunday we just had a live service, and I said, hey, to everybody, if you're online or in the room, we're all together. This is so cool because it's like we can experience this live, to where, lots of things can go wrong, all that kind of stuff. But there's such an authentic, piece of that. And that's what I love, that, we're experiencing that again. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I would absolutely reiterate what they said. Being involved in any way that you can, even if you can't physically be here on Sunday, there are absolutely ways for you to serve. And I know I give my kids plenty of opportunity, but they need that. And that's something that I've noticed with our kids, like their world is very different. And so their attitudes and their behaviors, I've obviously followed suit. And so gratitude is one of the things that we work on every day, you know, with prayer and thanksgiving, right? So we work on gratitude, and it drastically changes their heart when we're consistent with it. And we just talk about it. It's just a conversation. It can be at dinner. It can be in the morning with school. We do high-low rainbow, but it's just changing their perception on things, and then watching them ask questions to us too. Like, you know, we allow a lot of conversation about like, hey, you know, well, Jason and I will start conversation like, oh yeah, I remember that one time when God, you know, did this in this moment, and you know, we'll just share things like that. And so I think that's really important for them to hear, because they don't know how to process that. You know, but for them to be able to hear us process, it's brought up a lot of questions just over the years that they ask us about God, and so, or Jesus. And I think one of the things that I would say for a new believer, or maybe if you've fallen off of the wagon and, you know, you need some help getting back into those practices, I think, one, giving yourself grace, but then two, allowing yourself to be flexible with what you're doing in that time. And I know that's for me, because my kids are still pretty young. Anytime we'd have a baby or school would start, it was like your whole world shifted yet again, and it felt like March, obviously with not all the emotion, but give yourself that flexibility to reorganize the way you're spending time with God. You know, when babies were brand new, it was like, oh, I have to get up in the morning. No,
just survive.
You just need to survive. And you're probably going to talk to God more than you realize.
Yes.
And you're, you know, you sign up for those emails. You have, you know, the YouVersion send you a reminder at 3 o'clock or whenever you know you're going to be awake. In the middle of the night, you know, and you spend that time wherever you can, and not be so rigid about this is the way I hear it should be. And instead of allow yourself to be flexible with what you do and how you do, because you know what, while one person may love music, someone else may not, and they may be like, I'm an intellectual, because you're staring at me.
Okay.
Somebody might be more of an intellectual and say, I need to read everything, and I need to understand that word, and I need to understand why, and so, you know what you like, and God's going to lead you in that direction, and
I love that. So. Yeah, I think what you just said, Sarah, I think is so important, especially during this time. And I tried to emphasize that on Sunday. Just saying, I don't think this is like, you know, an intentional thing. I think it's just a drift to pull our eyes off Christ. I think there's like this gravitational pull, and there's all these things every day bombarded with. And it's like when you have a little one, I mean, the reality is, gosh, you know, have some grace with yourself, have some patience with yourself. It's okay. Like, God is big enough to handle, you know, that you're going to get out of your routine, and maybe you're talking to him at like 3 a.m, and that's what that looks like. And I love that, because I think as we kind of start this new season as a church with live services, I think it's a fantastic time to go, okay, well, whatever's happened has happened over the last 7 months, but this is a fresh start. Like, this is something, this is a new season. And if we can give ourselves a lot of grace, perhaps it actually empowers us to be able to go, okay, let me try something different to connect with, you know, God, and keep my eyes focused on Christ.
I love the idea that it's never too late to make the next wise choice, right? Whether it's a new day, a new opportunity with church, starting YouVersion for the first time, joining a parenting group, a CG, starting point, like, it's never too late. And I think that's part of what I really love being around the DNA here, that the judgment that could come, you know, in other places, so to say, that, like, it's okay, we're all, you know, I've restarted so many times in my life. You know what? Whether, and you could be too crazy practical. Could it be eating or working out or whatever? But the reality of, you know, being a part of North Point and working on your like spiritual muscles, if you will. You know, no matter where you're at, whether you've crossed the line of faith or not, to grow and learn, it's never too late to take a step. And
yeah, I think that's so important. And I'm just curious, we'll wrap up with this, but I wrote down a few things just to go, like, here's really practical stuff. So I think one of the things is, you know, as practical and as simple as taking a walk. that there's a time that you do that, or, hey, 2 or 3 walks a day, and just, to be able to breathe, to be able to get outside, to be able to get, different context. Obviously, I think reading the Bible, I think that's a pretty big one. And I just think, any creative ways. I love 2 weeks ago, I think I used the Passion Translation. So if people go, oh, the Bible's really hard, and you're reading King James or something like that, or I totally that was that was William Tyndale back in the 14th, 15th century, and so it's it should be hard because that's not the way we talk. And so, maybe it's changing the translation to the Passion. Maybe it's what you were saying, Sarah, with the idea of getting a reminder. So I think anyway, just, there's no race with the Bible. It's just spending time there. And that's one of the greatest ways I think God just simply reminds us, in this rhythmic way to go hey, here's who I am. And it's all, like I said in Sunday, every day he's inviting you. Give me your heart. Trust me. Keep your eyes right here. Don't pursue those things. So I think the Bible is a great way. I think what you were talking about, Krista, relationships, I can't tell you how many times I've used the phrase, I need to borrow your faith. Because right now I'm really having doubts. Right now I'm struggling right now. And I've, sat on the other side of people and I said, hey, borrow my faith. I know you can't see the promises of God right now. And I know it's really hard to think, how could God? And so can you borrow my faith? And I think in relationship, we can do that. So it's my eyes are not on Jesus. I'm going to admit that. Mm-hmm. But yours are. And I'm glad I'm meeting with you because you're giving me a new perspective. So I think relationships are, a key, and intentional relationships. I think podcast, I love Ravi Zacharias' podcast. And they're 13 minutes. You speed them up 2 times in 6.5 minutes. You're good to go because they have a little announcement. And I'm that is fantastic. I cannot tell you how many times I've woken up and I'm groggy and I'm grumpy and I'm whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, on the way to work, I listen to a Ravi podcast and it's, double the speed and I like that. And by the time I get to work, I'm man, that was so refreshing. That was a really great perspective, and it puts my eyes on Christ. I think books are really good. I even wrote down counseling. I think this is one of the most wonderful times to discover you, and discover you of today, discover you of 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I'm telling you, one of the greatest catalysts for me in terms of my growth is discovering who I really am, and then bringing that before the Lord and letting Him to go. I'm it's every morning I wake up going, God, I need you. There is no, I am not going to make it today just with all the stuff I got. And so that keeps my eyes focused, because if I'm counseling on a regular basis, I got to deal with that kind of stuff. And then, anything, what you were saying, TP, serving, getting out there. I think we just had a blood drive, and that's a fantastic thing. And I'll add one last one. Of what Hebrews 12 said is there's a great cloud of witnesses. And I mentioned William Tyndale. If you just read the life of William Tyndale or somebody like him, he had a singular focus to get the Bible in everybody's hands, because the Bible is only in Latin. There was, some of the priests couldn't even get to the Bible. And it was institutionalized in the government, and he was so focused to go, if people could get the scriptures, perhaps, they'll discover Jesus and God is really for them. And so, that was you read his life and the struggles, and, eventually being burned at the stake for getting people the Bible and taking it from Latin to English. And you're going, this guy's a hero. Mm. He is one of the, and it inspires me just going reading biographies or listening, to something like that, and to go, you know what? I've got my eyes off Christ. And I think stories can inspire us. So that's another way. So anyways, anything else you guys would add to that, or just to the conversation as we wrap up?
I know you've said it, or it's been mentioned, but I think accountability, and that it goes into being a part of a group, or can happen anywhere. But just having people that are in your life and that you're intentional to be around, let them see who you really are, and be open to that feedback, right? Mm. To say, hey, I want you to speak in when you see me off. And, as I mentioned earlier, that 24 years and counting, Amanda definitely speaks in to that. But also, right, to have a guy as well, to be accountable. But I think that's a really important piece, because we can get distracted a lot. Mm-hmm. And if our default is to have relationships, and if you've set it up to say, when I'm off the mark, Buck, I want you to pull me up by my my shirt and,
which I often do.
And shake me a little bit, like help me.
Yeah, sure.
So
that's great. Well, guys, thanks so much for being here and taking the time and, having this discussion, being vulnerable, with things that are going on in our lives, like real issues, real challenges, real complexities that can take our eyes off Christ and make it difficult. So awesome. Well, next week, we are kicking off a brand new series all about leadership. It's going to be called Brick by Brick. And so I'm so excited for it. And we're just going to talk about all of us could grow in our leadership. And that, as a mom, as a dad, in our family, in our marriage, in our relationships, at work, in these times of complexity, just, personal leadership. And so we're going to kick all of that off next week. So make sure, listen, either online, tune in online, or come in person next week, and we're going to launch that whole thing. So thanks again for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.